Welcome, folks, to the latest edition of Election Science Office Hours, a webinar and podcast that's hosted by our Lynn Center for Science, Society, and Policy here at Caltech and moderated by me, Mike Alvarez. There's an archive of at least a dozen, so I think it's more than a dozen, maybe 13 or 14 now episodes that you can find on YouTube. They're on Spotify, they're on Apple Podcasts, and they're also on our Caltech Election Integrity Project website at protectingtheelection.us. We were actually just joking about getting LinkedIn to work for us, but you can follow this on social media. We're on LinkedIn, X, Blue Sky, and we're always there updating the work that we're doing. Now, this is going to be a super fun episode this morning. Our guest today is Dr. Gretchen Macht. Gretchen is an associate professor of Industrial and Systems Engineering at the University of Rhode Island. She's also the executive director of the Engineering for Democracy Institute, known as EDI. The EDI, also originally known confusingly as URI votes, URI votes. Now, I say that confusingly just because I have a colleague whose name is URI, and so I would always get confused about, which URI is it? Is it Gretchen's or is it? Anyway. But it's a really fantastic project, EDI. It really is a unique, one-of-a-kind, state-of-the-art, one-stop shop for election officials to get support and help for the incredibly unique, complex election issues that arise all the time, but through solutions provided through applied engineering. And we're going to talk more about that as we get forward. So Gretchen's research is focused on the areas of human systems engineering, team performance, voting systems, sustainability, electric vehicles, and solar energy systems, just about everything literally under the sun. Since joining the University of Rhode Island faculty in 2015, Gretchen has mentored 7 PhD students. That's an incredible record.
Thank you.
20 master's students, and has had over 50 undergraduates participating in her research group. Spanning 6 University of Rhode Island colleges and hailing from 5 different continents. I've actually ran into some of these students in your work in LA County, and I have to tell you, they're the most professional and just really remarkable students that, other than my own, of course. But they're fantastic students, and they're really doing some amazing work, which we'll talk about. Gretchen also somehow finds the time to co-lead Girl Scout Troop 418.
Mm-hmm.
Her work has been supported by collaborations with the Rhode Island Secretary of State, Rhode Island Board of Elections, the Democracy Fund, Stanford MIT Healthy Elections Project, the NSF Partnership for Large Election Jurisdictions, Election Trust Initiative, and the US EAC. Congratulations on all that.
Thank you.
Her degree is from the Pennsylvania State University, excuse me, better known as PSU in my world. PhD in industrial engineering with a specialization in human factors and ergonomics. MS and BS in industrial engineering as well, with tracks in manufacturing. And a postdoctoral scholar in architectural engineering. More like design, I guess.
Like construction management.
Okay, construction management. Okay, so it shows you how little I know about engineering. So in any case, Gretchen, welcome to Election Science Office Hours today. Thank you for being here with us. And we're going to talk about the unique work that you do in election sciences and what your EDI team does in the area of science, technology, engineering, and math, which we better know as STEM. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm at Caltech, which is, another STEM place. And I have not been super successful, with a couple of rare exceptions, at getting our engineers here excited about working in election technology and election administration. One of the things that I found incredibly impressive about you and your work is how quickly you've been able to jump in the field, get to know election officials and election administrators, and to get election officials excited about the work that you can do to help them. So how do you do it? What's the secret sauce?
The secret sauce. I think most engineers, as applied scientists, want to do impactful work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's about translating the work that we do to target their core of what that means for them. So if we think about Archimedes, right, and we think about give me a place to stand and I will move the earth. It's about the power of leverage,
Mhm.
right? So how can we leverage what the students' interests are and show them that they can do something from beginning to end, that they can be a part of a small change for someone else and to see it in real time. And sometimes it's in the matter of like 2 weeks. Some of these projects are really short, and some of them, and it's, over an entire semester or multiple years. And I think that to see them do that, then it starts to drive their own creative juices. They get really enthusiastic about it, and then they start sharing it with others. And then it kind of just becomes infectious in a beautiful way
Mhm.
that we just kind of get excited about helping. And I know that in all of the research for engineers and the engineering education, and if you look at minorities in engineering, the number one way to keep them in engineering is to show them that they matter, their work matters, and its impact.
Mhm.
So, what is better than that? What is better than showing them that we can do this and have impact? And you can do it for a little bit, or you can do it for a lot of it, or you can get a PhD in it, or do this and then you go about your day and become a production manager in a manufacturing line, and that's great.
Mhm.
So I think that that's kind of how I've always pitched it in my own way, is kind of transferring my enthusiasm and
Mhm.
energy, sharing with them how they can use their energy to benefit others in our community. Because even though people be people, like, most of us want to help others. And I think
Mhm.
that that's when we wake up in the morning as engineers and we're like, all right, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to be really good at it. We don't design something so that nobody uses it.
Mhm.
Right? We design it in the hope that everyone will use it, and it'll change how we drive a car, or it'll change how we play this video game. Like, I think that there's lots of ways that we think about it, and I think that if we can make that connection for
Mhm.
them, I think that that's where the real power um, is my very non-specific answer. But if I may, I do have a one story that I'll share,
Sure.
and I'll tell the end before the beginning, which now I can share this because he is my assistant director for the Engineering for Democracy Institute. But I had him in class, and other people wanted to work with me on other projects. And I looked at him and I was like, "So, Nick, um, are you interested in working with me or the lab?" Or he's like, "There's nothing that you work on that is interesting to me." And I said, "You want to bet?" And because we were just starting up our work in elections at that time. And I was like, I have this, wisp of a thought of an idea. Can
Mhm.
you help me with this? And he's been working on it with me since 2017. He's got finished his bachelor's, his master's, his PhD, his postdoc, and now he's here as my assistant director. So I think that it's all about connecting
Mhm.
with people in a way that matters. And I think that also answers how we can translate that to election officials as well. They
Mhm.
are people who have jobs that have enormous responsibilities and actions. And just to tell them, I'm here to help.
Mhm.
If and one of my favorite things that pledge director Carolina says is, if you had a magic wand and you could do something and change something, what would it be? And being able to sit in those spaces and in those rooms is already a unique privilege. Because,
Mhm.
like, as you know, the election science community is really tight knit, and they all talk, and all the election officials talk to each other. So to just be in that room to listen to those ideas, it's also being able to understand my own work and my own knowledge and then translate it to them and be like, wait, actually, I can help you with this. I mean, I sat next to one election official all day for 8 hours. And it wasn't until Carolina asked this question that her and I looked at each other. We're like, wait, I can actually help you with that. And she's
Mhm.
like, no one has ever been able to help me with that. I was like, I think I might. And I just met with them earlier today, and they were like, you can solve something that takes me 8 hours, you can solve it in 8 minutes. Like, that's the power of that impact, just to release enough stress for these people who do amazing jobs. What, 1 in 4 are brand new to election officials? Like, just to help. And, that's kind of how we talk about it. That's kinda what and who we are, at our core, and yeah, I love the people that I work with. I love the work that I do, and, I think that just if you can see this through video, you can see I'm smiling the whole time. I'm not forcing it, it's just who I am, kind of in a take it or leave it kind of way, but yeah.
Your enthusiasm is infectious. But is there, so when I think about engineers, I usually think that they like to build stuff, like
Oh,
they
yeah.
and make cars and fool around with physical objects and make robots and things like that,
Yeah,
which is totally cool. I'm not saying that's not totally cool. It's stuff to do. It's amazing work.
yeah.
There's something that's unique about the complexity of election administration or voting technology that when you start to talk about those problems with engineering students, that it becomes compelling in a certain way that building a bridge is not.
I
Is it the
think
people part of it that's really interesting?
I think the people part is more interesting that they'll be willing to admit out loud, but I think it's also building something new.
Hmm.
And it's not necessarily like always new math, but
Hmm.
sometimes adding to old math. Or I have one researcher and she was looking at all the literature and she's like, Dr. Macht, I went back to the 1960s and I'm still not finding anything. I was like, keep going back further. And she's like, how far do you want me to go? I was like, until you find something. And I think that that's where there's an opportunity to be creative.
Hmm.
Right? And we're critical thinkers at our core, and we have a problem that's being put in front of us, and we're being asked to solve it.
Hmm.
And one problem that we were asked to solve, I was like, well, can't you just release this constraint and then therefore this will be fine? And I can do this like, on an Excel, VBA script and we'll call it a day. Right. And they're like, no, legally, I'm not allowed.
Hmm.
I'm like, that's awful. Like, how can you deal with this? She's like, this is why I haven't solved this problem yet. I'm like, okay, all right. And talking to my network, talking to, computer scientists, going back to my own PhD advisor and being like, I think I know how to solve this, but I also might break it.
Hmm.
Still able to create, we're still able to design. And I think that that's where sometimes in engineering, we are told that if we're not working on these main 5 things, we are not helping or we're not solving the coolest challenge that exists. And everybody else is taking care of the other ones. And I
Hmm.
think one of the things for me was when I first got into this work through the former Rhode Island Secretary of State, I was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna work with them in the 2018 midterm, and then I'll be done, and it'll be fine." Because, like, everybody else has got this covered. There's no need for me to continue to do this. I'm gonna go back to electric vehicles and charging behavior and routing problems, and it'll be great. And after that, they were like, "Oh, no, 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 I shared your work with these other people, and they need help in this way. Can you help with that?" I was like, "That's a whole nother side of the coin for us in engineering that I did that once a long time ago."
Hmm.
And I think that it's the creativity part, the not being stuck or stagnant part that for me gets very exciting.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm designing things all the time. And maybe and I'm creating new math or combinations for a new optimization equation, or I have to figure out how to explain the complexities of a solution of a simulation problem in a way that it's the average of the average of the averages to someone who's like, wait, just tell me what it says. And so it forces you to grow. It forces you to think differently and to not just think critically and build critically and design critically, but to be able to then communicate it to the people who need it. And I
Hmm.
think that that's the part, it's the whole thing. And I love that. And I think once people start working with us and we start collaborating and connecting on that, it's really kind of powerful. I
Hmm.
think um, for most of us engineers, when we think about where we can create or facilitate change, if we look at business and we look at systems,
Hmm.
right? Thinking in Systems, a primer by Donella Meadows, who's like the godmother of systems thinking. She's amazing. And if you haven't read that book, you totally should. Um, and she, in her book, explains that there are 12 different layers that we can influence change in a system. And the top two are like massive paradigm shifts. And you're like, yeah, that's real change. I mean, but there's change in the other 10, and most
Mhm,
engineers just play in the bottom four.
mhm,
12 through 8. Those are the ones that we kind of own by, by the numbers, by the book. But there's this opportunity in the middle that we can also, if we can communicate and work with others and translate that work through effective collaborations, we can actually facilitate a much higher ranking change.
mhm,
And it's just getting people to believe in that, to connect that to them and their ethos. But I haven't met an engineer yet who I haven't gotten to like at least get even the tiny bit enthusiastic about the idea of doing something nobody's done before
mhm.
or hasn't done yet.
Well, and that is the challenge of elections, in particular in the US. There's just so many opportunities to make that kind of difference and to work on those kind of problems. It's a rapidly evolving space. I've been doing this, it's over 25 years. I'm just an old timer at this, and it kind of like you and your story. It's like I thought that I would drop in and drop out.
Hmm.
Once I got in and saw just how interesting and important the questions and the research were, I just kind of got stuck doing it and continue to do it to this day. But I do think that we need more engineers and people like you to get engaged. And so, how do we do that? I mean, as I was, communicating with you before, the kind of question I had here was, how do we get more Gretchens? How do we do that? How do we encourage more other than what you do? You're obviously teaching, involving students at the University of Rhode Island, right?
Sure, yeah.
But more generally, we just need to have more engineering students and engineering faculty like yourself involved and engaged. So, how do we do that?
I agree that we do because I am still one person and I have a young family and I got to be everywhere all at once for everyone. And as much as I do enjoy that, there are times where I can't or there is a particular challenge that I can't help with, or I'm legally not allowed to observe in that space because I'm not a voter in that county.
Mm-hmm,
And I think that there is a lot of different opportunities. And if I've learned anything about elections is that it's
hmm,
local restrictions, local challenges, local communities, how communities see themselves and define themselves is structurally different. I mean, that's what makes America beautiful.
hmm,
And I think for me, that's why we started the STEM for Elections Network.
hmm,
And it's this idea that if you're just interested, sign up. You'll find out the things that we're doing. We hold seminars, workshops, trying to just kind of translate kind of this almost apprenticeship idea, if you will, of, hey, how do you work with an election official? Well, you don't go in and tell them what to do because they can't listen to you in that way anyway. You know,
hmm,
those types of things. That's a really powerful tool
hmm,
that if we can just start to connect with each other and if you're interested in joining the STEM for Elections Network, you can go to our website at uri.edu/EDI. STEM for Elections Network was right there, and you can click on the tab and sign up.
hmm,
And you can get those email blasts, or you can follow us on LinkedIn, and where we have the STEM for Elections Network right there. And the point of it is to create this community. And what we hope to do is by eventually taking that community and connecting within peer-to-peer networks and come up with basically an understanding of what everybody's expertise is and location. And
hmm,
if it's like, yeah, I need somebody to go and observe in this town, in this county. Oh, you know what, Mike, can you go do that? And you'd be like, yeah, all right, what are you looking for? Well, they have the special election. It's in August. I just need you to go and like count how many people are working and how many people are doing what job. Yeah, okay. That kind of thing, like that we want to eventually turn it into beyond general interest to this part B, this actionable fellowship, if you will, of STEM professionals who are trying to help and support and what that looks like. And it may be, somebody who's on the boots, on the ground going in
hmm,
and actually literally counting things, or to, hey, I'm not an expert in this one particular part of engineering, but I know
Mm,
you are. Can you help me understand this placement of this part? And if I
mhm,
want to understand an optimized Dropbox placement, how can I do this? Because I think I can do it this way. And then create those collaborations and to create these memorandums of understandings with other institutions, with people, and just build it out so that we can help be a facilitators of support. Because
mm,
ultimately, the few months before election day, especially a general election, as you well know, are wild. And
mhm,
people will contact you and be like, I need the answer to this and I need it in 4 hours. And you're like, I don't think you understand how big of a problem that is. And I'm also not in that space. I've never seen your space. I don't have anybody in your space. Like, and it's not because you don't want to help. It's just that as a part of your ethics as being a professional and also being, a professional engineer, there's like certain things I cannot do without having more information. So
mhm,
I think it's those types of things that we were really hoping to grow and expand the network. But we've only been doing it a year. And we've already grown to 120 plus members. And thank you for being on that webinar and seminar, Mike. So I think that that's where I see that. I would love to support others who would like to do that. And
mhm,
if you do want to do that, just reach out to me and we'll talk about it. I don't I don't believe it is my job to own the space for everyone.
mm,
I believe it's my job to show that the space can be for anyone and to help them along that path. Because I think when we do think about election science, that last word is kind of the foray for all of us to participate. And
right,
yes, I love political science and I love computer science and I love all the things that you do and all of your work. And I think that it's, an opportunity for all of us as a kind of to latch onto that.
mhm.
And so, how can I help do that? And I guess it's by doing things like this and sharing what we're doing and how we're doing it and getting more people involved.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic program, and congratulations on the reception that it's got so far.
Thank you. Yeah. And then I'm not that great at social media either. So I so I had to get some undergrads to help me. And so it can only go upward from here. And the people that we've talked to are really passionate and also just interested. They're like, I didn't even know that this can happen. And for me, as a background in sustainability, right? And I look at the UN Sustainability Development Goals. One of them is, secure, peaceful institutions,
Mm,
right? So, and sustained democracy. These are these types of things. It's like, oh, I'm still in the overarching bin. I haven't changed anything about me. I'm just, finding a place where I fit.
mhm.
And it's been awesome. So
Well,
I
I
hope
went,
that answers your question.
yes, it does, and it just well, it doesn't in the sense that like I just had like 15 different ideas for different ways to talk about building out the network.
Oh, I would love to have
Well,
that conversation.
one of them, right, just top of mind is simply, I think y'all need to get on the road and like come to places like Caltech,
That's a
and
great idea.
really, MIT, Harvey Mudd out here,
Oh, so that's
Carnegie,
so
yeah,
I've
come.
been to Harvey Mudd, and that's where my where my former dissertation advisor is now at.
Mhm.
And when we went to him when we were visiting out in LA in November, and I was like, David, I don't know how to fit this into my hierarchical multiple integer program, and I'm kind of tripping pretty hard on it. And I feel like I'm coming to my parent and telling them that I messed something up, but I haven't done it yet. So I haven't messed anything up. And he just sat there in his like very like, way is just like, wait, you're doing all this work with election officials? This is an election of like, if we solve this, this will help people in this community. I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "How the heck did you get here?" Like, and it was beautiful, and then it was one of the things that we started having those conversations. Well, what if we collaborate with Caltech, Harvey Mudd, and then I don't constantly have to fly all the way out to LA or Orange County to figure out what's going on. I am always willing to hop on an airplane. Let's be very clear. I've got the travel bug. I've had it since I was like born. So Yeah, I think that that would be a great idea, right? And to connect and to
Mm.
facilitate some of if we start it almost in like a pilot of this year and start connecting those and getting ready for the midterms, then we can then show what successful models look like, and then get ready for 2028. I mean, that would be Mike. Okay.
It's exciting. Yeah, because we're just we're on the verge of being in the next election cycle already. So
I know. I'm trying to not think about it if I'm entirely honest.
yeah, like a little road trip in the fall would be a good idea to just, generate enthusiasm. But
That would be awesome.
let's talk about the other side of this stuff for a few minutes, and there's a
Yeah.
really awesome question in chat that I think we should talk about too. So the flip side to this with doing this kind of interdisciplinary work, all right, is, as an academic, we have our academic imperatives, like, for example, tenure and promotion. And we were just talking in the green room that, recently in the last couple of years, you got promoted to an associate professor, and congratulations, that's great.
Thank you. Yeah.
Um, but how did you do that doing all of this interdisciplinary work? Because I can't imagine that your dean um, really knows what it is to be an engineer working in election science. So how did you manage to sort of navigate that path successfully?
Yeah, I was really afraid of it at first, to be honest. Um, and because it wasn't what I was originally hired to do.
Mhm,
One of the things that I love at URI is that we are small enough that we are powerful and small enough that I can go and knock on my dean's door and he knows who I am.
mhm,
And when I was originally going up and getting things ready for tenure, then and I was explaining to you, all of my administration changed. So it was my department chair, and then all the way up to the provost and the president of the university, everybody changed in 1 year. It was this massive shift. And I was already terrified because I had already spent the last few years going and meeting with everybody, explaining who I am, what I do, posting all of the presentations out on the window of my office or the front pages of the publications, and just trying to be like, yeah, and we did this thing and it was great. And so I was really terrified. And I met with the new dean, and I can tell you it was February 2nd, 2022. I can remember the exact date. And I walked in, I was like, hi, my name is, and you do the introduction, and I'm going up for tenure next year, and I am terrified, and here's why. And he's like, "Well, can you explain to me what you do?" And what learned along my pathway of being terrified is that it was how I was communicating that was not connecting. And I was like, "Well, I've done this and I've done this and I've gotten this, but I didn't tell the story first. I was just very focused on the metrics. And I was like, look what we're able to create. Look at what we're able to do. And here's my impact. And I know that it doesn't necessarily align with all of the metrics, but this is what it means. This is what it means to be me. And also my metrics are solid, but you can measure that however you want. But for me, I'm pretty confident in who I am and what I do. And it took that switch for me, almost that terror of not even knowing. And I talked to my network, and they're like, you can't, look for other jobs while you're going up for tenure. You can't like, and got all of the voices, right?
yeah, yeah,
Which are very real. And I just went in and I was like, this is who I am. Take me or leave me, because at this point I can't do anything else about it. And they were like, so you're taking your work as the essence of applied science, which is what engineering is, and going and doing it and helping other people.
mhm,
Like, yes, that's amazing.
mhm,
Oh, well, yay, thanks. Also, I work with these people here, these people here, these people here, and blah, 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 and then I was just like a fire hose
mhm,
of just information. Because when you're passionate about what you do and you just
mhm,
know, right? And I think for all of us who were or are actively on the tenure track, you're not doing it because it'll bring you fame. Like, that's not why you become a tenure track professor. You're doing it because you're passionate about what you're doing and you
mhm,
want to solve this problem and you want to get to the bottom of it. And if that's designing something new, if that's fixing something old, if that's, creating the next, right? And so when I was able to connect that, I was doing it with others, and that's where the success came from.
mhm,
The dean was like, "Okay." That was the first 5 minutes, and the other 5 minutes are, I haven't hired a graduate student yet, and, you've obviously done it quite a few times. Can you tell me what I need to do? That was it. It was the most wild conversation, and I think that that's just a part of being open and transparent about who you are, and has always served me very well. So that would be my advice. And that's how I have kind of ruled ever since,
Mhm.
my own kind of internal metrics. But yeah, when you push me really hard, and I come off as pretty charismatic, but you push me really hard, I would really just like to like sit in the corner and read a book. Like just that is my happy place. So I think that it's really just also I don't say I a lot.
Mhm.
I say we a lot.
Mhm.
And I think that that's helpful when working, even on something that is very like tenure track, very individualistic. The individual exceptionalism of it can really like get to your head at times, right? So for me, I've made a very conscientious mindset of we. Like we worked on a proposal,
Right.
and or Dr. Bridget King at the University of Kentucky, who I have on speed dial every time I think I'm going to blow something up. Not actually literally. I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. I just meant like engineers, sometimes we have a habit of not thinking through every single ramification of the work that we do. It is how we get chlorofluorocarbons to hydrochlorofluorocarbons. Like this is just right. So,
Mhm.
we don't always see beyond in certain ways, and so checking in with trusted colleagues who
Mhm.
will be like, "No, Gretchen. No, 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 no. That's nope, mm-mm, mm-mm." I'm
Mhm.
like, "What? Nope." But it's the same thing. It's not the same thing, but it is. No, mm-mm, you can't go into Georgia and tell them it's the same thing. I was like, fine. So, but it's those types of things and those collaborations. And then when I share those with the powers that be, they're like, I can't even believe that you're an engineer who's talking to other people who aren't engineers. I'm like, I actually really enjoy talking to all sorts of people. And I think that that's kind of the power in it. So if you're interested in translational, multidisciplinary, all the disciplinary work, like just go for it and own it. And then it's about how you explain it that really matters.
Yeah. So it sounds like don't be afraid to take on the big challenging questions. Uh,
Hmm.
in fact, almost search them out, right?
Yes.
And when you do that, own up to it and be comfortable in your own skin.
Yep.
Two, three, be learn how to explain what you do, right?
Yeah.
And four, leverage collaborations, right?
Yep.
That's how,
Look at how you just broke down my long ramble into 4 bullet points.
well, but it does. I mean, it sounds simple when I say that, right? Uh,
Yeah.
but I do think that that's a really, really good formula for success, not only in our field, but just pretty much in any field, right?
Yeah.
So let me just read a really interesting question that came up in
Okay.
the chat. Let's just see what your thoughts are here. From a systems engineering standpoint, what kinds of tools or technologies, especially AI-based ones, do you see as most promising for increasing voter engagement in rural areas? And there's a second part to it. How can these tools be designed to meet the unique needs of rural voters, especially in local elections? So, how can AI especially be used, in particular in rural areas, to engage voters and get them involved and participating?
So my first question, and with anybody saying AI, is what type of
Hmm.
AI?
Well,
um,
fill in the blank there. What kind of AI do you think you think might be most useful? Is it like chatbots? Is it language models? Is it
I mean, we have all those things,
Mhm.
right? I think for me, it's making sure that any machine learning algorithm that is
Mhm.
established and created includes them,
Mhm.
includes the rural voters.
Mhm.
We've worked in rural communities, and they do have fundamentally different sets of challenges. It doesn't mean that they don't have any challenges. It just means that the way that they're concerned about distances and traveling in distances is totally different
Mhm.
than an urban setting. And I think one of the things that we really focus on here at the Engineering for Democracy Institute is trying to create systems and tools of systems that can help include all different types of situations. And if
Mhm.
we have a tool that doesn't include that type of situation, I would love to talk to that jurisdiction who needs it, and I'd love to work with them. So to really get pointed on answering the question is I think that we need to make sure that the ones that we do include those types of
Mhm.
jurisdictions and those types of voters. And I can tell you in certain rooms that is not happening. And I think it's not because we don't want them to be included. We just don't necessarily know how to. Or so I think there's plenty of opportunity there. I mean, that is an entire body of work that could
Mhm.
be really explored in a really beautiful way. I mean,
Mhm.
even if we're talking about Dropbox locations in rural areas, so that they can feel secure and safe when they put their ballot in the box, if they are able to vote by mail, which luckily a lot of spaces with states in the in the West Coast and the Midwest tend to have those options.
Mhm.
Right? Where on the East Coast, we do not tend to have those options as freely available, or people, they have them and they don't choose to use them. So I think that there's a lot of different ways that we can interact with that and
Mhm.
find out more. There's some really great work that is happening in a political science community that's looking at rural voters and what those communities look like and how to interact with them. And I think that as long as we continue to include them in the more holistic models, that I think that it will happen if that helps.
No, that helps a lot. I actually, my reaction to the question is similar to yours. And I'd actually be a little more critical of not only just social science and political science, but election science in general. I think that we oftentimes just engage in something like the drunkard search, right? Which is we just simply look at we do our work in places that are convenient. You know,
Yeah.
I happen to live in Los Angeles County, right? And I have easy access to LA County and Orange County. And so a lot of the work that we've done just focuses here. I mean, it's simple. And it's like for me to get, a handful of students to, a dozen polling places in a day is easy. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of research that's on the urban areas that really has focused on the problems of election administration in urban areas because
Yep.
it's on what's simple. And I think that's I'm owning up to that right now. I think that's on us. So I think you're right that the what we need is we really do need to start thinking hard about non-urban voters. And I don't really think
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. Um, so let's pivot a little bit. We're already I've taken up a huge amount of your time already, and we're kind of getting to the towards the end of what I promised would be the time we.
I'm also more verbose than you probably planned. So
No, not at all. It's a fantastic conversation. It's you're just it's really your enthusiasm and excitement, right? That is just so engaging, and I just absolutely love it. And it's like I think it's what is part of your secret sauce here too, right?
oh, thank you.
And so let's talk a little bit about that secret sauce though. So like when let's say you wanted to do a research project in a rural area and
Mhm.
you needed to approach an election official somewhere. Um, how do you do it? How do you, as an engineer, approach talking to an election official, in particular when there's somebody that you want to start a collaboration with? What's the approach? How do you go about navigating these difficult conversations that we all have when we want to collaborate with an election official?
So the first thing I would recommend is be in the rooms that they're already in.
Hmm.
So go where they already are.
Hmm.
Present something that is meaningful to you and do it well.
Hmm.
And then in that room, know where they are, know where they're sitting, make eye contact. And then afterwards, most of the time they come up to me.
Hmm.
Or I go and I seek them out and be like, hey, I know you were in the room when I presented. Is there anything in what I presented that would be of interest to you?
Hmm.
I know that it's only a section of my portfolio, but I know from others that you might have a situation that could use some assistance, and how may I be of assistance? Most of the time, the first question I get asked is, how expensive are you? And then I'm like, I'm an academic. My cost benefit model is structurally different.
Hmm.
And, we talk that through. And then I'm like, all right, and then this is my answer. What magic wand would you have? What would
Mhm.
you need to adjust? Well, I have this challenge here. Oh, have you considered this? Have you considered this? Have you and then we just feed off of each other. And I think I'm not afraid to say I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm not afraid to say I don't understand. I'm also not afraid to ask questions and in that being wrong, having that opportunity to grow. Sometimes I don't always understand every particular nuance of a ward versus a town and a precinct and a jurisdiction or supervisors versus clerks or polling location versus vote center versus polling like some of the jargon just scrambles my mind, and if somebody could write me a dictionary, and I know at one point somebody was working on it, I don't know where you are, but I need you to finish, is just also being free and willing to interact. And I think one of the things sometimes as engineers is we get so good at being experts at what we do
Mhm.
that sometimes we also forget that others are experts at what they do.
Mhm.
And so I try to have that conversation with them. It doesn't always work, you
Mhm.
know, or if they're on the fence, I'll go and talk to somebody else in the room who at this point I've had a collaboration with, and I'll be like, so, Nancy, you know that person over there? Yeah, I really want to work with them on this project, and I think that they're terrified of me. Would you mind? Oh my gosh, I know them. I've been and then that works. I've
Mhm.
only actually ever needed to do that once.
Mhm.
Most of the time, it's just being willing to listen and being able to translate what they're saying in a way that makes sense to what I can offer.
Mhm.
Like if they're asking me, "Oh, well, I need a communications media kit so that when, things happen and crisis communication happens, I need to go in front of a TV. Can you help me with that?" No, I cannot, but I know other people who are very good at it.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's the handoff, right? And other times they're like, so nobody can help me with this problem, which I shared earlier. And I was like, yeah, but that's fun. And they were like, yeah, okay, good. Go hit your head on that and let me know how it goes. So I think that that's how those collaborations start. Sometimes it's literally Tammy Patrick at the election center saying, I need you to meet this person
Mhm.
because they don't realize that they need to work with you. Or any member of our community, right? Like if there was somebody who needed to understand, specifics of turnout. I'm not that person, but here is a list of people who can help you. I think that that's also a way of recognizing an ownership of your space.
Mhm.
And if you are genuine and authentic on that, that starts a the collaboration from a place of trust. And when you start with trust and then you continue that communication and collaboration, you can get some really interesting projects. Things that I never thought a million years I would ever need to program in Salesforce. Like, but also, why not?
Mhm.
And I think that that's where if you're constantly looking at every problem as a nail and you only have a hammer, then you will not do well in this job.
So from your perspective, if you had to throw out a few top of head research ideas that you think are really important that we start to think about, other than the rural voters one, which we talked about.
I know, but now that's on the top of my head. That feels
Okay,
so
well, we can talk more about that too, but like we're coming into these election cycles, and as I tell students, like every election cycle is like, it's an experiment essentially. Like it's an
it is.
opportunity we because election administration is constantly changing and evolving, so there's always new and interesting data being generated for us to use. But looking at these upcoming election cycles, what do you think some of the really exciting research opportunities are, especially in the kind of areas you work in?
So I would say the first thing is to see what laws changed.
Hmm.
Because what we know about laws in this rapidly changing environment, and it's a sensitive, rapidly changing environment, is that we don't necessarily always know how it's going to influence or impact.
Hmm.
And that's where most of my questions come from,
Hmm.
right? So we have Utah. Utah, since 2012, was a state that was primarily vote by mail. They had turnout rates from vote by mail of 92 to 96% given any specific election.
Mhm.
In the last few weeks, vote by mail is now, excuse absentee, or the words choices I still don't completely understand or recall exactly correctly. But the point is that they are no longer a primarily vote by mail state. Well, they haven't done that in a long time. And we're talking about translation between rural and urban communities. You also have mountain communities. You also have ones where they're going to be voting in November. Then in mountain communities, you have other issues like snow, weather, down power lines. You have other different conditions. That in and of itself,
Mhm.
when we start looking at, a branch off of that, we talk about natural disaster planning. That is huge, and it's only going to get bigger. There's amazing minds at the University of Maryland who are looking at that.
Mhm.
But like how a natural disaster looks in California is fundamentally different how it's going to look in Rhode Island versus how it's going to look in Florida. And until we figure out a way to agree on voting through technology, it's going to continue to be a problem. So
Mhm.
how do we continue to plan for that? I think one of the things that is also challenging for me is the forecasting of it, the forecast of the planning, the forecast of the models, the preparation planning. Election officials plan all year round,
Mhm.
and yet they can only foresee so much.
Mhm.
So those opportunities are endless. I mean, if you talk about Louisiana, for example, like
Mhm.
Louisiana's humidity and just how they have to store paper that has to go into technology that assumes that the paper is not filled with water. Like, this is what, like, it's those types of things. I don't think that it's any one thing, but if you think about where you live and what you know and how you have to plan for that, that's already, those are life works
Mhm.
right there. And we're not even getting into some of the security, cybersecurity, really diving into any of the AI on it. I mean, there are things where election officials have to figure out warehouse planning,
Mhm.
but they have to figure out a warehouse 5, 6, 8 years from now when the budget is available to do it, and they only have certain chunks. And warehouse planning in and of itself is a fundamentally huge problem because a lot of our literature and warehouses are semiconductor warehouses and manufacturing plants, like a lot of the tech stuff. It's not some of this, for lack of better term, like borderline analog
Mhm.
kind of things. So the volume requirements are enormous, but also we can talk to people in library and library science who store things for a living. Right. So there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration. We didn't even get to talk about, accessibility design in voting. What does it mean that we have 30 machines in the United States that were used in November 2024? 30 different types of machines. All right. None of them are VVSG 2.0 certified.
Right.
None of them. So they don't even have technology that they can, certified at this point where they can change a font size to 4 different sizes,
Mhm.
let alone sans serif fonts, which we know are better for different types of users. And when we get into visual impairment, auditory impairment, ambulatory impairment, we get into cognitive impairment, this influences how voters interact with the system. So what we found, it was Schuler who did it for, just published it in 2023, and I say just, but it feels like yeah, a long time ago, but it was just in 2023. They found that anyone with a disability, almost 20% of them had difficulties in voting,
Mhm.
like 20%. And then if you didn't claim a disability, that was only what, 6.1%.
Mhm.
Like, the opportunities are endless and they are everywhere. And it's how we choose to interact with them and being able to have doors open for them that they can do that. So I could go on all day, but I just wanted to, those are the things literally floating around in my brain right this moment.
That's incredible advice. And I do hope that there are grad students and postdocs and undergrads out there listening and watching this because I absolutely agree with you, and I think that really is the tip of the iceberg. And what I'm going to make a note of is I think we should circle back and talk about accessibility at some point.
I would love that.
I think that'd be a really good conversation to have because I don't, again, it's an area of election administration that it gets attention, but not anywhere near the amount of attention it deserves.
I agree.
It's a very big problem. So as we conclude here, is there something that we haven't talked about that you wanted to mention?
Ooh, anything that I wanted to mention? I think that if you're interested in doing work in elections, although the community is small, we are welcoming and open to new ideas. It takes time, so be patient with us all. But also, like, you have the opportunity to help real people
Mhm.
now, your neighbors, your friends, your family, for a process that is fundamental to who we are as Americans. And no matter any given day, on any given environment, PR, news, media, like all of the things, like that's back, what it comes back to it for me is that these
Mhm.
are real people who need real solutions. And I think that scientists, technologists, engineers, and mathematicians, we can work alongside political scientists, public administrators to help.
Mhm.
And I think that there is something about that that is also fundamentally American that I just love.
Mhm.
So if you are interested, and this talk at all is appealing, you know, myself, Mike, we're here for you. We're here for it. We're here to help support you do that. And I think that I don't want you to take this as, oh, well, they have it covered. Because we don't, because we are still, like, but also don't think that because we've been successful, there's no space for you to be successful.
Mhm.
Because that's not how it works. It's not a zero-sum model. This is a cooperative game. This is not a competitive game. And as soon as you think that it is, you won't get far fast. But if you think about it in that way, where we are all working together, regardless, East Coast, West Coast, Texas, Wisconsin, we are here to help facilitate elections. And I think that that's the power of it. And that's what I tell myself when I get myself up in the morning on some real gnarly days, or, being out observing elections in November 2024 and, being up for 39 hours. I mean, that's not what I thought that I signed up for, but I'm really, really happy that I did it. So
And no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, 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 and that's just, people sign up for Tough Mudders all the time. That was just my particular version of a Tough Mudder.
Well, and you're making a difference. I just wanted
Thank
to
you.
let folks know that during this talk, I will not mention their name, but somebody who was listening to this live, um, well, that's probably going to reveal who they are, but it says they wrote that what Gretchen has done for election administration in Rhode Island is amazing. So, you have a lot of fans out there, and I would agree, not just in Rhode Island, but across the board.
Thank
You've
you.
done a lot of incredible work, and again, I think what you're doing, especially with the STEM for Elections Network, has got a huge amount of short-term and long-term potential. And so, thank you for the work you do, and thank you for spending time with me today. It's really been great to catch up and to chat with you.
Yeah, and thank you for asking me. This has been a pleasure, and I mean, this is what it's about, right?
Mhm.
This is what we do and how we roll in election science. And if you want to come join the fun, please come. The challenges aren't getting easier, but ultimately, thank you very much. It's sometimes I'm not going to cry. I can hear my member of the three master students who just graduated. I called them the Three Musketeers, and one of them always was like, "Dr. Macht, don't cry." I was like, "It's the Italian into me. I can't help it."
But
Um,
you cry now because nobody will join me again if word gets out that Mike, got Gretchen to cry at the end. I mean,
but yeah, I mean, it's been wonderful and amazing experience, and if I never get to do it again because, I messed up somewhere somehow, I am just so thankful for this opportunity to do this and to do this work and to work with the people. Election officials are some of my favorite people in the whole world. They are just doing the grind because they believe in it. They believe in what they're doing, and I love that, and every time that I think that the work is only in Rhode Island or the work is in a void, right? Or, we're in our offices a lot of the time, or we're working from home, or, it's those are the who I think about. And I'm like, okay, you know what? This is for, and
Mhm.
insert their name. I can do this. I can do this for them.
Yeah.
So I think, thank you for the praise, but I wouldn't be here without the we.
Well, thank you so much, Gretchen. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll get this video and the audio up online as quickly as we
Yep.
can. So thanks, Gretchen, and you take care.
Thank you, Mike. Have a great one.